I heard about that.
Good try. Well, good morning, everybody. I want to welcome everyone to the 2023 Ethics Awareness Week keynote featuring Comptroller General of the Government Accountability Office, Gene Dodaro. My name is Matt Hauer. I'm the Dean of the School of Public and International Affairs Department. So we also, I think, have a special guest here, Joan Dodaro, who spent her career at GAO. She may or may not have filed in, so we welcome Ms. Dodaro as well. So between the two of them, they've had quite a long stint at GAO, probably the length of the agency's existence. Mr. Dodaro became Comptroller General in 2010. He has testified before Congress dozens of times on important national issues, including the nation's response to the coronavirus epidemic, the federal government's long-term fiscal outlook, and a long list of high-level risks to the health and security of the United States. In addition, Mr. Dodaro continues to develop GAO's efforts to meet the needs of Congress in every sector where the government has roles and responsibilities. As Comptroller General, Mr. Dodaro helps oversee the development and issuance of hundreds of reports and testimonies each year to various committees and individual members of Congress. These efforts have led to hearings and legislation, billions of dollars of taxpayer savings, and improvements to a wide range of government programs and services. Crucially, GAO's work leads to actions taken by virtually every agency in the federal government to work more efficiently and effectively. Frankly, when much of Washington is caught up in politics, GAO is consistently, continually working on actual assessment and auditing of what government does in practice in terms of policies, programs, and operations. Mr. Dodaro oversees among the best trained interdisciplinary professional staff in the federal government, including some of our own graduates from the School of Public and International Affairs at UGA. In a GAO career dating back more than 50 years, Mr. Dodaro has held a number of key executive posts, including Chief Operating Officer and also the #2 leadership position at the agency. He is the singular example of what it means to be an effective civil servant and a leader in the public interest. Mr. Dodaro, who holds a bachelor's degree in accounting from Lycoming College in Williamsport, Pennsylvania, is a fellow of the National Academy of Public Administration and a member of the Association of Government Accountants. And he's won more awards and recognitions than there are seats in this chapel. I hope you will join me in welcoming Comptroller General Gene Dodaro.
Good day, everyone. Thank you, Dean Hauer, for a gracious introduction. It's a pleasure to be here with you today to talk about the important subject of ethics during Ethics Awareness Week here at the university. I applaud the university for sponsoring such an event. It's terribly important for a number of reasons that I'll talk about this morning. I would first say that it's a pleasure to be back here on campus. I was here in 2019 and provided the Getson Lecture, and the GAO that I lead and the University of Georgia have enjoyed a very good relationship over the years. As Dean Hauer mentioned, we have a number of students, graduates from this university working in our organization, including our managing director for congressional relations. And Dean Hauer is also on an educators advisory panel that I have to advise me and counsel on not only recruiting and retention issues at GAO, but also a wide range of policy matters dealing with higher education and other matters. Now today, given the subject of this week, I'd like to talk about ethics from three different dimensions. One is the importance of personal ethics in your professional lives. Second are the serious consequences that occurred from a number of significant ethical lapses during the coronavirus period with the over $4.6 trillion that the federal government allocated in order to improve public health and provide assistance to the economy, individuals, businesses, et cetera. And then thirdly, the criticality of building an ethical culture in an organization, separate and apart from individual ethics. This is important. It's not only important for people to have ethical behavior themselves, but you have to influence an organization to provide that type of culture so that you can carry out effectively your businesses. Now, first, from a personal standpoint, as Dean Iyer mentioned, I lead the United States Government Accountability Office. Now, our job is to audit the entire executive branch of the government. So any part of the federal government, from defense to healthcare, transportation, et cetera. And we're located in the legislative branch, so we're independent to be auditing the executive branch. We even audit parts of the judicial branch in terms of their use of money for their facilities and some of the other activities. We don't get involved in reviewing judicial decisions, of course. So we have huge responsibilities. And over my career, I've literally dealt with thousands of people, political appointees that come and go with different administrations. I started when President Nixon was there. I came into Washington during the Watergate hearings, right out of college during that period of time. And so there's a lot of changes that have happened since then. But, people come and go, thousands of people at the GAO. I also deal with people at the state and local level. And I'll talk a little bit more about this later, people around the world who run national audit offices in other countries that we're trying to help, particularly in those countries that are developing still and in need of economic and social development, and they're trying to establish democratic institutions throughout the world. And so as part of this, I've learned, the most important thing is to have an unmutable set of values that you adhere to during that period of time, that you're dealing with all these people. Because it's particularly important in our job, but it's important in every job. But in our job, we're always critiquing somebody. We are, providing advice, trying to get them to take action. If we're not trusted, if we're not viewed as honest brokers, if we're not viewed as professionals with integrity, we would not be able to produce the type of outcomes that we are seeking to do in government. GAO exists to support the Congress in carrying out their constitutional responsibilities and to help improve the performance and enhance the accountability of the government for the benefit of the American people. So in order to do this, you have to be trusted. So your ethical behavior is your currency. And I've dealt with people over the years, and I've dealt with people, in this case now in the Biden administration, there are people I dealt with when they were in the Obama administration, and they're back. Same thing with Republicans. In the Trump administration, there are people who came back from prior Bush administration. So you're dealing with people, and if you don't have or aren't viewed as an ethical person, and I know in politics, you can disagree. And I've certainly disagreed with a lot of people over time, but it's good to have honest disagreements, but not over whether or not you're honest, not over or not whether you're, you have integrity, that you keep your word, that you are a reliable person, you're a fair person. And those things are just terribly important over time. So I try to emulate that behavior in leading the organization, not only because it's the right thing to do, from my view, but it's important to your effectiveness. And it can't be overstated how important it is when you're dealing with people, particularly when you're dealing with people who you don't have a lot of time with. When I'm going up to a congressional hearing, doesn't matter how complicated the subject, and you've seen probably people testifying before the Congress. I've done it over 200 times. But when you do it, you got 5 minutes. I mean, you got to explain why you're there, so your reputation precedes you and all these type of things. And so people will listen better if they believe you to be an ethical person and believe you to be there in in the interest of the country. So it's very important, which is why it was very disheartening for me to see what happened during the pandemic. Now, before I took this job, I had a higher opinion of human nature, all right? And over the years, I've seen bad behavior occur around natural disasters and other areas where there's a need to provide assistance from the federal government in a rapid fashion. And so there's really an intense effort to get the money out quickly. And these type of events bring out the best in human nature, but they also bring out the worst in human nature. Now, during the COVID, I've never seen anything like it. We had, on the good side, we had a lot of healthcare professionals who were out dealing on the front lines with the disease, putting themselves at risk. We had Operation Warp Speed to develop the vaccines. A lot of federal employees, people at the state and local level, and public health in particular, were out, really trying to help people and to cope with the, unprecedented circumstances during that period of time. But you also had a lot of people who were exploiting the emergency during this period of time. We had people who committed conspiracies, money laundering, theft, embezzlement, smuggling. I mean, you name it, it happened during a period of time. Just to give you one example, in the unemployment insurance area, which was very important because a lot of people lost their jobs during the pandemic, there was over, our estimate, $100 billion to $135 billion was lost to fraud. All right? That's a lot of money, even when you're dealing with trillions of dollars. And it was very unfortunate. Not only did we lose the money to fraud, but a number of people whose identities were stolen weren't able to get their legitimate benefits. So people were denied help in addition to the government losing this amount of money, and you don't recover these types of funds over a period of time. Fortunately, the federal law enforcement is pursuing a lot of these cases. There are hundreds, if not thousands, of cases still being investigated. And I wanted to give you some examples today. And when I'm doing this, listen to who committed the fraud, because there's a wide range of people, and the creative nature. If they don't use their creative natures to help solve problems, we'd be in a much better shape. For example, we had a licensed medical practitioner pleaded guilty to wire fraud and false statement, sentenced to over 3 years in prison. What they did was they sold products known as homeopathic immunizations, claiming that they would provide lifelong immunity to COVID-19. She gave people purchasing these products vaccination cards so they could convince other people they were vaccinated properly when they were not. These fabricated cards led to a lot of cases that led to health and safety risks, not only for the people who thought they had received a regular vaccination, but then they were going out and dealing with other people who also thought they were properly vaccinated when they weren't. We got another business owner who decided they were going to market a killer of airborne viruses. Turned out to be a pesticide. All right? So it was not only not good for you, it was dangerous, and particularly with an ingredient that was not allowed to be shipped through the mail because of potential for fire. They've had jail time as well. You've had 3 individuals associated with a nonprofit organization, okay? So far we've had a medical professional, a business owner, and now a nonprofit. They pled guilty to their roles in a $250 million scheme to defraud a federal child nutrition program. Over 40 individuals have been charged in the scheme. And what they did is they set up shell companies, have bribes, kickbacks, and fake invoicing. They claim reimbursement for purportedly serving meals to hundreds of thousands of children a day. In total, the individuals claim to have served over 1.3 million meals from December 2020 to 2021 and received over $3 million in reimbursements. The money never went to feed children. It went to buy them personal items for their own purposes. Next case, you had 4 defendants sentenced to conspiracy to defraud several COVID relief programs. The ringleader was sentenced to 4 years in federal prison. Through her tax preparation business, this person recruited at least 5 people to prepare fraudulent tax returns and applications for COVID relief programs for clients. She charged her clients up to 50% of the amount of the loans, fraudulent loans that they received. And she paid her employees a flat fee. She submitted fraudulent applications for loans in her own name, including the Economic Injury Disaster Loan Program, the Paycheck Protection Program that were for small businesses. And she also claimed more than $33,000 in unemployment payments during this period of time. So she hit the trifecta. She's preparing false tax returns, defrauding on loan programs, and also hitting unemployment benefits. And this was not unusual for fraudsters to try to defraud multiple federal programs over a period of time. Also, it was the first time that I've seen organized crime and international actors become so involved, and there are transfers of money to multiple countries across the United States that are still being investigated because that takes a lot more time. So the exploitation was not limited to just people in our own country taking advantage of the situation, and individuals committing fraud, as I'm outlining here, but organized crime and international actors as well. In another case, there are 2 members of a family were sentenced to federal prison, and their roles in over $500,000 scheme to file false tax returns, and they also stole those economic incentive payments. I don't know if you remember those, that people under a certain level got a check directly from IRS to help them meet their needs during the pandemic. And what they did was they recruited foreign individuals who had spent time in the United States and had them file fraudulent tax returns for education and other credits. And to hide this, they enlisted others to open U.S. bank accounts to deposit the refunds, ultimately opening up 68 accounts across 16 banks in the names of 14 individuals. And they took this money and they bought themselves real estate and other personal items as well. So that's why a lot of this money is not going to get recovered either. I mean, people that steal the money don't usually invest it in CDs and it's sitting around somewhere. Last case I'll mention here was an individual that got sentenced to more than 11 years in prison in order to pay over $17 million in restitution, and his connection with fraudulent scheme to obtain approximately $24.8 million in paycheck protection loans. This individual submitted 14 fraudulent applications to 8 different lenders for purported businesses he owned or controlled, claiming these businesses had numerous employees and hundreds of thousands of dollars in payroll expenses, when in fact no business had employees at all or were paid wages consistent with the amounts claimed. And this person got over $17 million in loans from the federal government. Now, again, in the Paycheck Protection Program, there was only a certain amount of money that was available. So every dollar that went for fraud meant some small business that had legitimate claims did not get anything because the money ran out during the application. So these things have ripple effects in terms of the impacts on individuals, in this case businesses in the United States. Now, this person used all the money, bought multiple homes, he paid off mortgages of other homes, bought a fleet of luxury cars, and he sent a lot of money in international money transfers as well during a period of time. So, I go through these things to just explain, the ethical lapses that occurred during this period of time. When people were in real need, we had a lot of our fellow citizens and others took the temptation to exploit the situation. So I was very disappointed in the extent to which it occurred across the government. We're in the process now of trying to estimate across the entire federal government how much fraud occurred during this period of time. I mentioned just one program, unemployment insurance, of the $100 billion to $135 billion, but it's much higher. Now, what else can be done about this? I've given the advice, I've testified before Congress many times. Part of the problem here was that in the desire to provide assistance really quickly and to make sure that the money got out as fast as possible, Congress waived some standard requirements. For example, they allowed self-certification. So anybody could just certify that what they were submitting was true. This obviously is not a good plan to prevent fraud. And based upon advice that we and others have given them, Congress changed that approach and eliminated that. But by that time, over a few $1 trillion had been spent. They also waived the waiting period for unemployment insurance claims. Normally, there's a 2-week waiting period while the claim could be verified that the individual is eligible, it's a legitimate individual. That was waived too during the period of time. But also, agencies weren't as prepared as they needed to. We worked with the Congress to pass a law back in 2016 called the Fraud Reduction and Data Analytics Act. So we outlined what we thought were a great framework based on best practices in order to prevent fraud from occurring in the first place. So agencies across the federal government by law were supposed to implement this framework, and many of them did not. So by the time the pandemic rolled around in 2020, instead of being prepared as they should have been based on the 2016 law, they were not. And one of the things that was supposed to be done is a fraud risk assessment. So the Small Business Administration did their first fraud risk assessment in February 2022, after they've spent $1 trillion and all the money was gone. So it really, there was also a breakdown in the culture in the agencies that were administering these programs. So the combination of weak oversight on the part of federal agencies combined with this ethical lapses among the public created this huge problem where a lot of the money didn't get to the right people and didn't have the desired effect and wasted a lot of federal resources over time. So I've given Congress a number of legislative things that they could do as well. The government under normal times has a payment problem and make a lot of improper payments. And some of this, not all of it, is fraud over a period of time. So I'm trying to get that done. In the last fiscal year, the total amount of improper payments that went out across the federal government was at least $240 billion. A lot of this happens in Medicare and Medicaid, about half of it. So there's a lot of problems in the largest healthcare programs, which is one of the fastest growing parts of the federal government's budget. Also, a recent estimate by the Internal Revenue Service, there's about $688 billion in taxes that are owed under current law that are not being paid. So you've got some ethical issues there, as well as people receiving payments that shouldn't during a period of time. So I was even a victim myself. Somebody filed an unemployment claim in the District of Columbia in my name. And the district, fortunately, called our office, said, "You have somebody named Gene Dodaro working there?" And I said, "Well, yeah, he's working here. So, okay, we'll take care of this." And I thought everything was fine, right? So after the pandemic, we go to start traveling again. And of course, I file for a reimbursement for my expenses during the trip. And I find the Treasury Department had offset my payment back. So, well, you owe the District of Columbia money for your unemployment benefits. Apparently, they went ahead and paid some of the benefits anyway. I got it all straightened out. But it just goes to show nobody's immune during this period of time. And many people had really difficulty and didn't have the kind of access I have to fix these problems. They had their identity stolen. That really put them at a serious disadvantage. So last thing I just want to talk about before I open it up to questions is, how do you build an organization with ethical culture and throughout the organization? And I'll talk a little bit about how we try to do that at the organization I lead, but also with the accountability organizations more largely. These are auditors at the federal, state, and local level. And then I want to talk a little bit about the international situation as well. First, at the GAO, our independence is critical. One of the first briefings we give people is the importance of GAO being nonpartisan, non-ideological, fair, balanced, professional, fact-based, and fair in everything that we do. And everybody's imbued with those core values of accountability, integrity, and reliability, from day one. We have training programs. People have to be clear if they have a conflict. If you're auditing let's say a financial regulator of a bank, and for some reason you have a financial relationship with that bank, you have to recuse yourself. If you are auditing a federal program, there's a relative in that program that's administering it, you recuse yourself. If you feel like you're not objective on a particular subject that we're asked to look at, because we're asked to look at virtually everything in the federal government, you have to recuse yourself. Every 2 weeks, people have to reaffirm that they're independent based on the audits they do. We do about 600 audits a year. So this is a lot of time, and so you move from audit to audit, and you have to kind of continue to reaffirm what you're doing. We've got an ethics attorney, answers questions, gives constant briefings as we bring in new people in the organization going forward. We also set the auditing standards. Anyone auditing federal funds, even if you're a private sector CPA firm, have to follow the auditing standards that GAO has set. And I have a group of advisors that help set these standards, but they're ultimately our standards. And a big part of it, there's a whole section on independence and ethics in there. Because, the auditing profession is supposed to be a check on ethics by others. And so if you're not ethical in carrying out your responsibilities, you've got a built-in problem so that the checks and balances that are supposed to be working aren't working, properly over a period of time. So we have to make sure that we do this. So this is a very important situation. Like, for example, with the January 6th attacks on the Capitol, we were asked to investigate what went wrong, what information was shared ahead of time, what kind of training was given to the Capitol Police. And as much as I wanted to be involved in those efforts, I have a son-in-law who's a Capitol Hill policeman. So I said, no, I'm recusing myself from that work, so there's no question at all about the integrity of our work in that process. So we also work with state and local governments, and a lot of them audit federal funds, and so the state auditors have to follow our standards as well. We also set internal control standards for the federal government. This is for the executive branch managers of programs to do. You know, I set it by law, and then the executive branch implements it through executive orders from the office of the president, the executive office of the president. And so, and a lot of that deals with ethics, setting the right tone at the top, making sure that you've got good communication, you've got good supervisory control, you've got good checks and balances within the organization as well. And then lastly, I've been involved in a couple efforts now to help build capacity, which includes ethical behavior of auditors in other countries. There's an organization, an international organization of 195 countries of national audit offices. They're the GAO equivalent in their countries. You know, we all have different mandates, different laws, different systems of government, but every country has a national audit office. And some of them in developing countries need help and assistance. And some of them have a lot of limitations placed on them. And so I'm trying to work with these countries to improve their auditing capacity. For example, right now we've been approached by the United States Aid for International Development to train the Ukrainian accounts chamber to audit some of the federal assistance that's being provided to them to support their health needs and help them given the conflict in their country. And also they're setting up an institution to rebuild a lot of the infrastructure in the Ukraine. And so we're providing help to train their auditors to make sure that money does not get funneled into any corrupt activities and goes for the intended purposes of those countries. And we're also dealing with countries on virtually all continents, whether it's Romania, Ethiopia, the Philippines, Dominican Republic, and Suriname and other countries where we've been asked by our executive branch agencies to train the auditors and provide them training, which includes being independent, and there's international standards that we set for auditing, like we set the standards for our own audit organizations within the United States. We help set international standards, and ethics is a big part of that whole process. And because if your auditors aren't ethical, you really got a problem in their system of government over a period of time. I've also worked to establish a relationship with the major donor organizations. This is like the World Bank. The World Bank provides assistance to over 130 countries around the world. And a lot of aid organizations in other countries, the Swiss, the UK, a lot of Norwegian countries, the regional development banks around the world, whether it's an African Development Bank, Islamic, the Asian Development Bank, and others. We have about 23 donors, which include some global funds, and to work with them to build the capacity in these audit offices throughout the world. So far, we've gotten help through the donors providing some money directly to the auditors, and then we and other developed countries' audit organizations provide technical training and support to them. We've gotten aid to about 100 different countries. We're working now to try to help the most least developed audit organizations. We started out with about 9 countries in Africa. We've not identified some on other continents. What I'd like to do is to have every audit organization on every continent that needs help identified and a good plan to get them to development over the period of time. One of the big challenges that we're facing right now is a pushback on the independence of the auditors. In 15% of these countries, they're not even allowed to publish their reports publicly. And they're being cut back on their funding. they're being cut back on it. So I'm trying to, if you don't have a well-resourced independent audit organization, your commitment as a country to ethics, your commitment to transparency, your commitment to accountability is hollow. And so you really we need to continue to push for this. And it's a result of a lot of authoritarian regimes who don't want oversight. They don't want transparency. And there's a lot of these countries, there's a lot of corruption going on as well. So we're trying to fight the good fight, not only here within our own country to protect the federal fisc, but to also help other countries that are trying to have, well-functioning democracies and institutions in their own countries, many of which receive support from the United States. So I'm doing this to help protect the U.S. interests as well in terms of money we're providing for social and economic development. And if it doesn't go for the right purposes, it's not going to produce the right effect. So we're really not achieving our objectives to help these countries improve the quality of their lives, of their citizens, but also, proper use of federal money during that period of time. So, ethics can be a dry subject. When Matt first approached me about talking about ethics, I thought, oh, okay. But the more I thought about it, the more I was happy they asked me about it, because it's really at the heart of what we do at the GAO, and the importance of having a well-functioning democracy is to have good ethical behavior and to try to strive for the best you can. I mean, we're all dealing with human beings, and some you can count on to do the right things, some you can count on to do the wrong things. So you have to really be prepared to deal with the full range of everything, but to try to exhort everybody to exhibit the best behavior possible so that we can have the best society to live in. So I'll be happy to take questions.